Om. Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantif Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantif Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We start today on verse number 4 of chapter 7. Let's chant together. Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu khammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme भिन्ना प्रकृतिरष्टधा. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intellect, and egoism. Thus is by Prakriti, nature, divided into 8 categories. In the first 3 verses, as we saw last time, Arjuna tells Krishna that now I'll explain to you my true nature, give you the knowledge and the experience required to know my true nature. In the 3rd verse, he also pointed out, as we saw, that among the thousands who strive for it, only a few will get it. And so we have to be amongst those few. And now, to show that God is the source, the prime cause from which everything appears, he begins by describing 2 kinds of natures, 2 kinds of Prakriti. Prakriti means nature. So here he is describing what is called lower nature. If you see the first part, it's a very tricky verse. The first part of the next verse, verse 5, if you say, this is my lower Prakriti. So this phrase belongs to verse number 4. So what he's describing here in verse number 4 is his lower Prakriti. And this lower Prakriti, he says, consists of 8 things, of which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 3, 4, and 5. The first 5 are what are called the primary elements from which the entire material universe has come. Kham is Akasha, gets translated as ether. So it's nothing to do with the scientific ether. It simply really means space. So one way in which the Vedanta texts describe how the material universe came from that one abiding consciousness is, then there is of course the abiding consciousness. Then there is ignorance. The status of the ignorance we'll have plenty of time to discuss later on. This ignorance, at the cosmic level, that ignorance is called Maya. From that primary ignorance, all these material universes come. And so of these material universe, the primary building blocks, so to speak, are these 5 primary elements: space, air, fire or light, water, and earth. Now these, although these names, of course we have seen fire, we have seen water, we have seen earth, but it's not these material entities that we see that are referred to here. What is referred to here is the subtle essence of those entities. It's a little bit of a complicated thing in the sense that first are these subtle essences of these 5 elements. Then these subtle essences combine with each other and then become gross. So when we speak about water as we see it, it's not just this water. It is water plus a little bit of all the other 4 as well. So that whole process is called Panchikaranam. Many years ago, we had done this text. There is one text called Panchikaranam about how all these different elements combine with each other. We don't have to go into the technicalities right now. Maybe on some other occasion we can discuss it. It's enough to know that the elements mentioned here are not that those which we see with our eyes, but they are very subtle. Now, mind, intellect, and egoism, different commentators have interpreted it in different ways. Here in Sridhara's commentary, if you see in the commentary below, if you are carrying this text, he said, by the word egoism is meant egoism together with its products, the senses. By intellect is meant the cosmic intelligence, Mahat. By mind is meant the unmanifest Pradhana. In Shankara's commentary, it gets slightly reversed. It's a very slight change. Again, what is meant here is that these gross elements, they've come from the subtle elements. These themselves have come from the Ahankara. Above the Ahankara is a more subtle entity called Mahat Tattva, which is the source or cause of the egoism in all human beings. And above that, a source of that itself is the basic source called Mula Prakriti, which is the unmanifest material entity. So first it is unmanifest, then it becomes manifest. From there the Ahankara comes, and then all these gross material universe that we see comes. Again, you don't need to remember every little detail. Enough to know that by lower Prakriti is meant the material universe around us, both in its gross aspect and subtle aspect, Sthula and Sukshma. And so here, again, this you don't have to be dogmatic about these 8 categories as if it's always going to be 8. It doesn't have to be. In different books and different Upanishads, they have divided it in different ways. The idea, therefore, is not that 8 is some kind of a magic number, but it's possible to look at this gross universe and divide it according to one's convenience. So the number itself is not important. Verse 5. अपरेयमितस्त्वन्याम् प्रकृतिं विद्धि मे पराम् जीवभूतां महाबाहो ययेदं धार्यते जगत्. So this is my lower prakriti. Now this phrase refers to what we have just read in earlier verse. So what comes after that is the higher prakriti. Different from this, O mighty armed one, know that higher prakriti of mine in the form of the individual soul, jiva, by which this world is sustained. So in these two verses, Krishna is describing his nature divided into two groups, the lower nature and the higher nature. Apara prakriti and higher nature is called para prakriti. The lower nature is the entire material universe. And the universe is not simply what is out there. This is a part of the universe. So including our body, mind, ego, all of this is material, and hence it is the lower prakriti. The higher prakriti is consciousness which is reflected in this material universe. So what is jiva? Jivatma. So why don't we simply say Atma? Why Jivatma? What makes that Atma a Jiva? So simply Atman means just consciousness, pure consciousness. When that consciousness is reflected inside a specific body and mind and gets identified with it, then it becomes a Jiva. So Jivatma is an individualized self. A self which is not individualized will not need this adjective jiva. It will be simply Atma. But once it is reflected in a specific body and mind, then it becomes that individual self. So what Krishna is pointing out here is that the material parts of our personality belong to the lower prakriti. The consciousness reflected in it belongs to the higher prakriti. And then in the next verse, he'll say, he is the source of both these prakritis. Verse 6. Or let me first say something about yayedam dharyate jagat, by which this whole world is sustained. You see, what makes the world go round? And by world, I don't necessarily always refer to the galaxies and the planets, which is also part of the world. But the world that we experience is dependent on the one who is experiencing it. And this is something we need to remind ourselves as often as we can, because as the influence of the science that we may have studied in school, or the kind of assumptions we grow up with, we seem to think that the world we see has an existence independent of me. Which at least needs to be questioned. Which is to say, does the world exist when I am not aware of it? If the world has existence independent of me, the world can exist whether I am aware of it or not. Which is how 99.9% of us look at it this way. While I'm asleep, I'm not experiencing the world, but the other people are experiencing it. So the world is there even when I'm not experiencing it. Similarly, we think, oh, after I die, I will go, but this world will continue. That's how pretty much everyone thinks. But we are not really being too logical here. Think about it this way. When you go to sleep and you are watching a dream, right? And of course, how long does your dream last? When you wake up, the dream finishes. Now, what happens to the dream world when you wake up? Do you believe that, well, I have woken up, I have gotten out of that world, but that dream world is continuing still? Or do you feel that the dream world existed as long as I was experiencing it? What do you think? Do you believe that every dream you see is some world which is existing and you kind of peep into it when you sleep and then you get out of it, but that world is continuing somewhere? Or do you think that your dream is your own creation and it lasts as long as you see it? As long as you see it. Then why do we think that this world continues to exist even when I am not experiencing it? So just be aware of the logical inconsistency, that although all of us kind of think that we are very rational people, very logical people, we are not as logical as we think we are. We 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 live with certain unquestioned assumptions in life. So you don't have to come to any conclusion now, but at least learn to question, learn to see that the way so easily and effortlessly we dismiss our dreams as just my own creation, we are not able to dismiss this world as our own creation. But really, the two are very parallel examples. They are very similar, but our conclusion with one is different and our conclusion with the other is different. So just keep that at the back of your mind. So now let's see verse number 6. The reason I referred to that was because it is by which this world is sustained. So it is this consciousness reflected in the body and mind which sustains this world. The consciousness reflected in my dream I, dream self, sustains the dream. When the dream self wakes up, is no more the dreaming self. The dream world also vanishes. Similarly, there is the waking self. So I have a waking identity and I had some identity in my dream. As long as I am awake, this waking world that I see is a part of my experience. When I am no more awake, then you really don't know what happens to this world. So think about it this way. Even scientifically, when we say that I will believe something only if I see it, only if I directly experience it. I don't want to just be superstitious. I don't want to just believe in something. So sometimes atheists or agnostics say that, well, it's just a God is just a belief. Can you show God to me? Because unless I see it, I won't believe it. Good, that's a great attitude. Very much to be appreciated. But we must be consistent. I would think that if someone truly believes that seeing is believing, if I see it, then I will believe it. I think such a person will need to question whether this world exists when I am asleep, because you are not seeing it. It's just a belief that the existence of the world when you are fast asleep is as much a belief as someone who might say, well, you are just believing in God, you have had no experience of God, because we have not had experience of the world while we are asleep either. So it's again good to recognize that we live with lot of unexamined assumptions in life. That even most of us who claim to be very logical and rational are not really rational all the time. There are some of these blind spots, so to speak, in our rationalizations. And if we then recognize that, then we will see why this jiva, why this consciousness sustains the world. Once the consciousness is withdrawn from the waking world has no standing. It doesn't exist. When the consciousness is withdrawn from the dream world has no standing. So consciousness really is at the basis of all experience we have in life. Verse number 6. Etad yonini bhutani sarvani tyupadharaya aham kritsnasya jagataha prabhavav pralayastatha. Know that all beings have these two for their origin, these two prakritis that we just saw. I am the origin of the entire universe as also its destroyer. So these two prakritis which belong to God, therefore Krishna, not as historical Krishna, as the divine being, is the originator of the entire universe. So the whole universe, both subtle and not subtle, the material and the non-material, everything comes from the Supreme Being. And also destroyer means everything is withdrawn back into the Supreme Being. So it emerges from the Supreme Being and goes back into the Supreme Being. So destroyer is not in the sense of like destroyer, not in that sense. It just means, what happened? When you destroy something, you don't see it anymore. So when all the universe is withdrawn back into God, you don't see it anymore. So it's destruction in that sense. Is it clear up to this point? Okay. Verse 7. Mattav parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. Higher than myself there is nothing else, O Dhananjaya. In me all this is strung like gems in a string. So God is the source of everything. There is no other entity from which all this comes and into which it all disappears. So God is the prime source. There is no one beyond God. You cannot, for instance, ask from where does God come? Because if there were something else from which God would have emerged, then that something would have been God, not this one. And therefore, sometimes they call it the first cause. So everything emerges from God. Then, of course, the question can come, which we will not discuss now, is when all these things comes from God, in what way does it come? Because things can come from one to the other in many different ways. For instance, you can say yogurt. From where does yogurt come? One say yogurt comes from the milk, right? No milk, there is no yogurt. So the source of yogurt is the milk. And so one way things can come is just as yogurt from milk. Now when No, yogurt can't go back to back into milk. That's one thing you have to remember. So once milk, yogurt comes out of milk, milk is changed. There is a transformation of the milk. And then you cannot say, oh, I don't like this yogurt, let's make it back into milk. You can't do it. So that's one way something can be a source, but it's like a non-reversible source, and there is an actual transformation. But if you go back to the classic example of the rope and the snake, a coiled rope in a semi-lit room, and there is a snake. What is the source of that snake? From where does the snake come? It's a question.
Error in perception. Perception error.
Well, I can be sitting in my room. Will I see a snake? What was necessary for that snake to be seen? I mean, you needed a rope, right? I mean, I cannot have simply an error in my mind and see a snake. So one, the absolute need there is for the rope. You need a rope, a coiled rope, to see it as a. If you mistake a coiled rope, it won't be a straight snake. It will be a coiled snake also. So you see there has to be similarity. And so we can therefore say that the rope is the source of that snake. The snake could not have come if the rope had not been there. And so the snake comes out of the rope. You cannot say it doesn't come out because you are seeing it. And then, of course, when you switch on the light, the snake disappears back into the rope because you don't see the snake anymore. Now here, the rope is a source from which the snake comes, but not really. It's only apparent. So the rope itself, through all this process, has not changed. Rope has remained the rope all along. And yet, the snake kind of comes out of the rope, shows itself for a while, and then disappears back into the rope. So you could say in one way that the rope is the creator of the snake. It sustains the snake as long as you are seeing it, and it destroys the snake. That's basically how the world comes out of God. God creates the world. The world seems to stay for a while like the snake, and the world is destroyed. It returns back into God. So when we say everything, the entire universe is absorbed back into God, it cannot be like yogurt going back to milk because it cannot. It's the way the snake goes back into the rope. Does it make sense? If you want to now take it inside, because the snake rope both are outside, then think about yourself as a creator. You create the dream world. From where does the dream world come? It comes out of you. It's your own mind projecting all this movie at night. And then when you wake up, you withdraw it back into yourself. So every one of us is already a creator, and we sustain that world as long as we are seeing it, and then we withdraw it. And then just to kind of remind ourselves again, don't you think it possible that when you wake up every morning, you are creating this world? And you are sustaining this world as long as you are awake. And when you fall asleep, you are withdrawing this world into yourself. Does it make sense? Yeah.
But the world still exists whether we withdraw it into ourselves or not, right? It's still there.
Just a minute, yeah.
my question was, the world still exists whether we sleep or not, right? When we
No,
sleep.
that was exactly the point I was making. That although most of us believe that the world still continues to exist, we need to question that belief. Just as we create the dream world as soon as we fall asleep, we sustain it as long as we are dreaming, and we destroy it or it is absorbed into ourselves as soon as we wake up. Exactly in the same way, we create this waking world when we wake up. We sustain it as long as we are awake, and we withdraw it into ourselves as soon as we fall asleep. The process is exactly identical. One question that can come is that every night we see a different dream. Every morning we wake up, we don't see a different world. Is that a question that can come? Or no? If it's not a question, then I don't have to answer it. Does this question come? If it comes, then we can ask ourselves that when do I know that every night I see a dream, it's a different dream? I don't know this when I am dreaming. So when I fall asleep and I'm seeing the dream, it may be a new dream, but you don't know. You see that dream as like a world as usual. You might have started dreaming only 5 minutes suppose say you fall asleep at 11 o'clock. You start dreaming at 5 past 11. And at 10 past 11, your dream world is only 5 minutes old. It was created only 5 minutes ago. But when you are in that dream world, it doesn't feel like, oh, I just created it 5 minutes ago. It just feels like a world that has always been there. Doesn't it? So, it's possible to create something absolutely new and yet not know it. It's possible to create something which may be only 2 minutes old, but yet might feel like, oh, it has taken billions of years to evolve. And therefore, that question is easily answered. So, just as when we dream, we don't know it's a new dream. We think it's the same old world. And what's different? When we wake up in the morning, we feel it's the same old world. It may not be. Don't worry too much about this. Just keep this thought at the back of the mind that there are a lot of things that can be questioned, and a lot of things we don't question, a lot of things we take for granted. That is why the Chandogya Upanishad, and I've referred to this on earlier occasions, says for the highest category of student, Krishna doesn't mention it here. As we saw, Arjuna was not the highest category of student, which is great because he asks the kind of question we would ask and Krishna answers it. Very helpful for us. But in the advanced stages of learning, the Upanishad says, Tatra Traya Swapnaha. There are 3 kinds of dreams. Normally we think, oh, waking, dream, and deep sleep. So in these 3 states, we think only one is dream, other is waking, finally just sleep. The Upanishad then says there are 3 kinds of dreams: waking dream, dream, deep sleep dream. In other words, all the 3 are dreams. We are just going from one dream to the other. So just like even in the course of a single night, we see many different, we don't just see one dream every night. We see many dreams. And usually, if at all you remember the dream, it's usually the last dream before waking up. That's the one sometimes you might remember. But what the Upanishad points out is that the entire existence can be seen as a one series of dreams. We are just kind of switching from one dream to the next. And at least these 3 dreams were switching in a course of a 24 our cycle. There is the dream of waking, there is the dream of dreaming, there is the dream of going to deep sleep. Understood in this way, even this heavens and hells can be just in another dream, a dream of heaven. You gone and lived there, had a lot of fun. A dream of hell, when you gone, is a lot of, it's a very, well, a hell dream would be a very painful dream. A heaven dream would be a pleasant dream, but still a dream. And the goal is to wake up from all these dreams. The conventional dream that we are familiar with, well, we wake up every morning from that dream. Doesn't seem to do us much good because we are still kind of going round and round. But we need to then wake up from all of these dreams. Then no falling asleep again. And so falling asleep really means being cut off from our true nature. And waking up really means getting back to our true nature. When we wake up in the morning, we're not really getting back to our true nature. We're getting back to our human nature. And that's why the Buddha was the awakened one. So every morning we don't become Buddhas. We are still asleep, spiritually speaking. That's why you remember that verse in the second chapter that we have studied. Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam. That which is night to all people, in that the enlightened one is awake. What it means is this, that which is of which most people are ignorant, the enlightened being knows. And what the enlightened being doesn't consider as real, everyone considers as real. So again, keep this thought at the back of the mind. Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, they insisted that we don't have to follow anything blindly. Don't be afraid to question. And we need to then question our own assumptions in life. Sometimes it can be frightening. You see, thinking about waking, dream and deep sleep is rather, it's convenient, it's nice, it's helpful. But then the moment you begin to question whether even the waking may not be really real, it can be a little disturbing. It's almost like, as they say, pulling the rug from under your feet. It's a little bit like that. But again, as a brave student of Vedanta, you should be willing to face this little bit of discomfort, but not be afraid to question. That's where courage is needed. Courage is needed. A greater courage is needed to question one's own assumptions than the courage we might need in the world outside. Anyway, so all this I mentioned just to show that what sustains this world is consciousness. The material universe by itself can't stand on its own feet. So then, with this verse 7, higher than myself there is nothing else. So, higher than this pure consciousness, which is the source of all, both this lower nature and higher nature, there is nothing else. In me, all this is strung like gems in a string. In other words, everything that is perceived, the one connecting link of everything or everyone that we see in life is consciousness. Just like in a garland. So there can be lots of different flowers in a garden. In a garland. Now what is the connecting link? What is common to all those flowers? Just the sutra, that the thread on which those flowers are put, that is the one common link connecting everything. So every object, every person, all of us here, we are all this every one of us is a flower. And this is one big, huge cosmic garland. Now, what connects us, all of us? What connects us is pure consciousness. That is what he means. In me, all this is strung like gems in a string. Whenever Krishna says I or me or mine, he is referring to this consciousness, because that's why he is Krishna. That's why he is the incarnation. That's why we all learn from him, because when you and I say I, we refer to the body and mind. When Krishna says I, if he were to also refer to his body and mind, then there's no difference between Krishna and me. But when Krishna says I, not just Krishna, all of these great enlightened beings, all of these whom we worship today as incarnation, prophets, when Jesus says I am the truth, I am the way, that I of Jesus, that I of Krishna, that I of the Buddha, that I is not the common I that you and me. That I refers to this spirit, the consciousness. And that is the connecting link between all of these things. Do you have any thoughts or questions about what we said? Tom?
Swami, I know what I think consciousness means, but could you give me a definition?
Well, you define the consciousness that you know.
My definition is just an awareness
Awareness of what?
of whatever you're focusing on, an awareness of.
So your awareness needs something to focus on to exist.
So real consciousness is just sort of unfocused awareness?
It's unfocused because there is nothing to focus on. It's unfocused because that consciousness is all that exists. There is nothing apart from it. And that's why sometimes they use the word pure consciousness. Think about it this way. Say, we are conscious of every object, every person in this room. So I can say I'm conscious of the chair, I'm conscious of the table, I'm conscious of the flowers. Am I conscious of the consciousness itself? See, sometimes when we say, oh, there is a lot of light in this room, for instance, we say, oh, there is plenty of light. What are we really saying? No one can see light. Light cannot be seen. Our eyes cannot see light. And yet we say there is a lot of light. How can we make a statement there is a lot of light when we cannot even see light? Now what we are really seeing are objects illumined by light. When we see a brightly lit object everywhere, then our inference is there is a lot of light. Otherwise, how will I be able to see the objects? So we don't see light, but we see the objects illumined by light. Exactly in the same way, right now, consciousness, we are not conscious of consciousness itself, but we are conscious of the objects illumined by my consciousness. So because I'm aware of this table, how does this awareness of the table comes? This pure consciousness is illuminating this table with the light of awareness, light of consciousness, and that's why I'm conscious of it. So when the word consciousness is used in common discourse, even as modern science uses it, it's always, it needs an object, or an object is implied. So in a materialistic worldview, consciousness is produced in the brain. It's the result of neurological activity there. But the Vedanta's consciousness is not produced in the brain. Vedanta's consciousness is beginningless and endless. So the brain is not the origin. Brain may be the physiological organ through which that consciousness is operating in this material world and making us conscious of all those things. But the brain itself is not the source of consciousness. I'm still not defined it, but you kind of get the idea. So consciousness, according to the Gita, according to the Vedanta, is an eternal principle. Even God did not create consciousness. Nobody created, it's always there. And because it was never created at any point, it can never be destroyed. That's what we also read in the second chapter of the Gita, that everything which has a beginning will have an end. If something is born, it has to die. Consciousness was never born. Consciousness was never created. Therefore, it always will be. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Swamiji, about the dream and waking dream, you said. But I think there is one difference is about the time concept, because in the dream, it goes away in no time. But for our waking dream, the things stay for a long time. For example, if I sleep with whatever clothes I'm wearing, when I wake up, I see the same clothes in the same state. So how can I say it's going away?
Well, what do you mean the dream goes away in fast time? Sometimes
So the world created in the dream, as soon as I open my eyes, that world is gone. Or you
yeah,
said
but while it's there, does it seem to go in a fast forward mode? When you dream, what is the time scale in your dream? See, the two times are different. For instance, you might have slept for say 8 hours, okay, and you maybe saw several dreams, or even if you saw only one dream during those 8 hours, in your dream world, it has not been simply 8 hours. Maybe it could be entire lifetime in those 8 hours. So your waking time and the dream time don't move at the same speed.
yeah, that's what I was trying to tell, that this waking world, the time doesn't go fast. So that means this is
But
different
that's
world.
precisely the point. But in the dream, do you feel that the time goes fast?
No.
Well, so that's exactly my point. So it can go fast and yet you not feel it, right?
Yeah.
Because when you wake up, you saw it with just 8 hours. How do you know that this is not the same case with this?
Because the world is same when I was sleeping.
Well,
and
even when you dream, isn't the world same? Do you think it's a different world? You don't know a dream to be a dream as long as you are dreaming. You know a dream to be a dream only when you wake up. Only when you wake up, then you realize, oh, that was only a dream, right? So even you don't even need the Gita, don't need the Upanishad, just plain logic. You cannot definitively say that this is not a dream, because in the dream you will not know a dream to be a dream. You don't need Vedanta for this. It's just, actually, you find this even in the writings of Plato, showing that all brave people who are willing to think logically will hit upon this idea. Now, he's not speaking about consciousness or anything there, but he's raising a very legitimate doubt. What he is saying, he's not saying that this is a dream or anything. He's just saying no one can say for sure that this is not a dream. And I think that's completely very logical statement. Because you know a dream to be a dream only when you wake up. So only when you get out of this state will you know whether this was a dream or not. Otherwise, you just have to at least accept the possibility this could be a dream. Even to say this is a dream, if you don't want to go that far, that's fine. But at least if you want to be consistent in your logic, you must at least raise sufficient doubt that this could be a dream. I don't know.
Okay, in that case, I think another question you said that this world ends with us. If we are not there, we don't know whether this world exists. That can be questioned because we had seen people who were there, like our parents or somebody, and now they are not there, and still the world exists.
No. The parents and grandparents that you saw are a part of your world. Okay, let me put it this way. And this again, don't get terrified, but just for us, it's a good exercise for us to question some of our ways of thinking. Um, what if you are the only person in this world? Maybe there is nobody else, including your parents, grandparents, and the whole billions of people on this planet and galaxies. How would you feel? Okay, go back to the dream. When you go to sleep, let's say you are alone at home, and then you say, oh, I'm going to sleep. So you are alone in the entire building, and you fall asleep. And then you dream. In your dream, you see pretty much a world like this, with billions of people, mountains, trees, animals, sky, everything. Sun, moon, galaxies, everything is there. And you think, oh, I'm in the company of so many things. There are all these people, and you are having a great time in your world. But does that world really exist? You created that world. The only reality in that is you. You are the only conscious being, and they are all parts of your world. So when you wake up, they're gone. Right? So the people you see in your dream, okay, look at it this way. You are the one dreaming. Let's say you are the one dreaming and you see me in your dream. Okay? Who has control of that dream? It's your dream, right? I cannot do anything in that dream because it's your dream. So that's really not my world. My world will be my dream. But your dream is your world, and you completely control it. And when you wake up, you don't think that, oh, now I have woken up, but all those people I saw in the dream are still there. No.
But I feel even my dream is in not my control, except ending the dream.
Well, that's by control I mean ending itself.
Okay.
That's what I mean. So going back, so your point was that all these grandparents and great-grandparents have gone, but the world is still there. But what I'm saying is your grandparents and great-grandparents and everything are part of your world. You don't know the world that they saw. Okay, to put it in a more nutshell, all of us are not seeing the same world. What about that?
That I agree.
You agree?
Agree, yes.
Well, then the problem is solved, because then we are not in the same world really. You know, at the very least, in my world, I am the perceiver. You are all objects of my perception, right? But in your world, I am the object of your perception. You are the perceiver. So we are not really seeing the same world. Think about it that way. Because it's not something that, as I said, keep this thought. You don't have to keep it somewhere in the corner of your mind. Then all these questions that we often have, that, oh, some people are enlightened and they go, and the rest of us are still here. The whole everything gets topsy-turvy then, because there is only one jiva, and you are that jiva. I mean, just think about it. In your dream, if someone were to come and tell you, this is your dream, you are only dreaming this, you're not going to believe that person in the dream. If someone were to tell you, if you just wake up, we are all gone because we are a part of your dream, you're not going to believe it. But that's true. So the world that you see right now with all of its people, and not necessarily by that I mean only the people that you see with the eyes, even those who we see as gone, dead and gone, but even them, their memory, their thing, they are all part of my world. And when I become enlightened, I wake up. I don't have to then weep and say, oh, now what will happen to them? Because there was no them. You were the only one who existed.
In the dream world and so-called waking world, when I wake up, that me that was in the dream is gone too, right? So am I in this waking world really? Am I there? I'm also part of this world, right? So I'm confused a little bit.
Yeah, the body mind that you have is a part of this world, but you as a perceiver, which is what really the topic that was discussed last Sunday about being the witness. So the witness is the same. It's the same witness in the dream, in the waking state, in the deep sleep. So the only thing that remains unchanged, steady, is this just being, the one consciousness which is merely witnessing everything, not reacting to anything. Our mind reacts. The moment we react, we have only kind of got sucked into that dream and consider it to be real. If I'm just there, just like light, light illumines everything, but light is unaffected by everything. There is that in the Upanishad, that one verse comes that the sun, the light of the sun, is not affected by whatever is done under that light of the sun. So, under the light of the sun or under any light, good things can be done, bad things can be done. But light itself you can't say is good or bad, because light is simply a witness. It is not affected by what's happened under it. Similarly, we are just pure consciousness. We need not be touched or affected or polluted or contaminated by any good or evil, provided we just remain as just consciousness. But our consciousness has gotten mixed up with the body and mind, which is material. And that's why we suffer. That's why we feel limitation. That's why we are born and we die. So just keep this thought at the back of the mind. Don't, if it makes you too much uncomfortable, kind of leave it for some time. Don't lose your sleep over it. But now and then, when you feel like being a little courageous, when you feel like you have the luxury to just sit back and think about life, and then that might be a good time to then question some of these things. And then again, the moment you feel like, oh, this is going too much, then you say, okay, not now. You see, that is what happened when Narendranath, a young Vivekananda, when he went to Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna was so happy to see such a pure-hearted soul has come. He wanted to give him that highest realization right away. And he just goes and they just touches him. And he said, then he described later, he said the whole world started vanishing, all the forms, names, everything was just kind of disappearing. It's almost like, as I said, pulling the rug from under your feet. And he just shouted, he said, what are you doing to me? I've got my parents at home. And then Sri Ramakrishna said, all right, in due time it will happen. So some of these ideas can make us uncomfortable. So don't, in due time, when the time is ripe, when we become more and more strong inwardly and not so afraid to question some of our assumptions, we will be able to do it. So if you can't do it right now, don't worry. But just know that there are a lot of things that can be questioned. It's good to know that. Okay. Oh yeah, Ambaji. Yeah.
I was thinking that since we will perhaps not be enlightened in this world, this life.
Don't ever say that.
No, I'm assuming.
No, don't make that assumption. That's my point.
Okay, a person has to go through several lives maybe to get enlightened. So the waking dream, the phenomenon of death and rebirth is also the continuation of that dream.
There is no difference.
Yeah, so that we can say that every, like we have a different dream every night. Similarly, the different lives that
Yep.
we have is a different dream,
Yep.
waking dream.
Yeah, actually,
Till we
Swamiji's
get
one lecture is
enlightened.
around Mundaka Upanishad. We have that book, Mundaka Upanishad, the study of Mundaka Upanishad by Vivekananda. It's a thin little book in a bookstore. In that, actually, Swamiji makes this same point. This entire life, not just from birth to death, from life after life, including heavens, hells, and everything, are just an endless series of dreams. And we'll continue to see this until we wake up. That's the idea. So we had lots of talk of dream today. So have some good dream when you go home tonight. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. Swami Vivekananda's one poem is there, which I think it ends with something like this, that if you must dream, then dream but truer dreams, which are eternal love and service free. So that's how he refers to it. Okay. The other option to questioning all this, there's one other way to do it, is just surrender to Holy Mother. Say, Mother, I don't understand all these arguments and all these discussions. Whatever is good for me, whatever is this thing, you please show me the way. And then Mother will show. Sri Ramakrishna said, she is Mother Saraswati. She is born to give knowledge. So her birthday is coming at this weekend. We'll have a puja on Sunday at 10:30 as usual. There'll be music, flower distribution, flower offering, worship, everything, and prasad. So all of you are welcome at 10:30 on Sunday for Mother's puja. And that time, pray to Mother. Praying to Mother at any time of the year is effective. It's even more effective if you pray on her birthday. So pray to her, and then she will give us all the knowledge that we need. She'll give us that clarity to understand, the strength to not be afraid. So that we will do on Sunday. Next Wednesday, we will continue with the study of the Gita. This Saturday, we will not have Arati and meditation because we have to prepare for the Sunday puja. So that's the upcoming program. We'll conclude with a prayer now on page 3 of your books. Om. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.